Imagine a dream. Not a fleeting, nocturnal fancy, but a dream on the scale of civilization itself. A dream to build a repository for the entire soul of humanity. To gather every story ever told, every theorem ever proven, every law ever written, every song ever sung, and every discovery ever made, from every culture across the known world, and house them all under one roof. It was a project of such breathtaking audacity that it still feels like science fiction. But it was real. This was the dream of the Great Library of Alexandria, a place that was meant to be a lighthouse for the human mind, and whose destruction plunged the world into a darkness from which it would take 1,000 years to recover. Our story begins not with a fire, but with a vision. After the conquests of Alexander the Great, the world was smaller, more connected than ever before. His successor in Egypt, Ptolemy Soter, a shrewd general and a patron of learning, sought to make his new capital, Alexandria, the intellectual and cultural heart of the universe. Advised by the Athenian exile Demetrius of Phalerum, he initiated the grand project. They would build a Mausoleon, a temple of the muses, which was less a modern museum and more a revolutionary research university. And at the heart of this university would be its library. The goal was simple and absolute: to acquire a copy of every book in the world, and they were terrifyingly efficient. Agents were dispatched across the Mediterranean and beyond, armed with vast sums of gold to buy or copy any scroll they could find. A law was passed in Alexandria decreeing that any ship docking in its magnificent harbor had to surrender its books. The scrolls were seized by the library, where scribes would meticulously copy them onto high-quality papyrus. The original was kept for the library's collection, and the fresh copy was returned to the ship's owner. It was, in essence, state-sponsored intellectual piracy on an epic scale. Through this relentless acquisition, the collection grew at an astonishing rate. At its peak, it is believed to have held between 40,000 and 400,000 papyrus scrolls, a staggering number that represents countless works, the vast majority of which are now lost to us forever. But the library was more than a warehouse of paper. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of genius. The greatest minds of the Hellenistic world were invited to Alexandria, given generous stipends, tax exemptions, and free lodging. Their only job was to think, to study, to debate, and to push the boundaries of knowledge. And they did. It was here, in these hallowed halls, that Euclid wrote Elements, the foundational textbook of geometry that would remain unchallenged for 2 millennia. It was here that Eratosthenes, the head librarian, calculated the circumference of the Earth with astonishing accuracy, using nothing but shadows, wells, and basic mathematics. He also pioneered the system of latitude and longitude. It was here that Hero of Alexandria created the world's first steam engine, the Aeolipile, a device seen as a mere curiosity, but one that contained the seed of the Industrial Revolution. It was here that Callimachus created the Pinax, a 120-volume catalogue of the library's contents, effectively inventing library science and the concept of the bibliography. Astronomers like Aristarchus proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system, placing the sun at the center, an idea that would be suppressed and forgotten until Copernicus, 1,800 years later. Physicians like Herophilus pioneered the study of human anatomy, dissecting bodies to understand the nervous system, the brain, and the circulatory system. This was a place where history, medicine, engineering, mathematics, philosophy, and poetry converged in a blinding flash of intellectual brilliance. It was the world's first true think tank, and it was building a different future. So, what happened? How could such a brilliant light be extinguished? The common story, the one we see in movies, is of a single, cataclysmic fire. A mob of fanatics, a dropped torch, and the wisdom of the ages going up in smoke. The truth is more complex, more painful, and far more tragic. The death of the Great Library was not a single event, it was a slow, agonizing murder by 1,000 cuts, spread over centuries. The first serious wound was likely inflicted in 48 BC. Julius Caesar, embroiled in an Egyptian civil war, found himself besieged in the royal palace. To gain a tactical advantage, he ordered his men to set fire to the Egyptian fleet in the harbor. The flames, whipped by the wind, spread to the docks and the warehouses nearby. Did this fire destroy the Great Library itself? The ancient accounts are ambiguous. Some, like Seneca, write as if the entire collection was lost. Most modern historians believe it was more likely a massive warehouse near the port containing scrolls destined for the library or for export, not the main institution. But it was a devastating blow nonetheless. Tens of thousands of scrolls were turned to ash. The dream had been proven to be fragile. The subsequent centuries saw a slow, insidious decay. As the line of Ptolemies weakened and Roman influence grew, the patronage that had been the lifeblood of the Mauseion began to dry up. Political purges saw scholars expelled. Intellectuals were no longer seen as an asset, but as a potential threat. The spirit of open inquiry began to be replaced by dogmatism. Then, in the 3rd century AD, the city was rocked by a series of brutal civil wars. The Emperor Aurelian, in his effort to quell a rebellion, destroyed the Bruchion quarter of the city, the royal district where the main library and Mauseion were located. Most scholars agree that whatever was left of the Great Library was likely obliterated in this imperial conflict. Its end was not a bang of fanaticism, but the whimper of military collateral damage and political neglect. But the story has a final, famous, and heartbreaking chapter. The idea of the library had survived in a smaller, but still magnificent daughter library housed within a temple complex called the Serapeum. This was the last great repository of pagan and classical learning in the city. By the late 4th century AD, the Roman Empire had become Christian, and the old gods were now seen as demons. In 391 AD, the fiery Christian patriarch of Alexandria, Theophilus, acting on a decree from the Emperor Theodosius to destroy all pagan temples, led a mob to the doors of the Serapeum. The temple was torn down, its statues smashed, and its collection of scrolls, the last echo of the Great Library's dream, was scattered and destroyed. This was not a fire that burned books, it was a fury that erased an ideology. It was the symbolic final act, the moment the classical world of reason was truly and finally buried by a new age of faith. To contemplate what was lost is to stand at the edge of an intellectual abyss. We lost the complete works of countless playwrights like Aeschylus and Sophocles. We have only a fraction of their output. We lost the comprehensive histories of the Babylonian priest Berossus, which might have held the secrets of Mesopotamia. We lost astronomical charts that mapped the heavens with a precision that would not be matched for centuries. We lost medical texts that could have advanced our understanding of the human body, potentially saving millions of lives over the ages. We lost engineering diagrams, philosophical treatises, and epic poems from cultures whose names we no longer even know. We did not just lose scrolls. We lost time. How many of the discoveries of the Renaissance were actually rediscoveries of knowledge that had once been common in the halls of Alexandria? The steam engine, the heliocentric model, anatomical science, all these ideas existed in some form within those walls. The destruction of the library did not just burn the past, it burned the future. It threw humanity off its trajectory, forcing a reset that cost us a millennium of progress. The Ghost Library of Alexandria is not just a story about a building. It is a profound and eternal warning. It teaches us that knowledge is not inevitable. It is fragile. It must be protected, nurtured, and courageously defended from those who fear it. Because in the ashes of every burned book, and in the silence of every forgotten scroll, lies the shadow of a future that might have been.